Okay, well, I have about a couple of hundred slides in my slide deck, but I decided to do a brand new one for this one, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully you know my blog, it's online, and by the way, I'd like to thank Dean Johnson who set this all up. He kind of encouraged me to do this and worked with and pushed on AWE. So if you don't like it, it's his fault. Yeah, I'm mostly going to be talking about consumer today. I actually think there's a very good market for enterprise. I think the market for enterprise is getting better and better understood. There was a whole left by basically HoloLens. They kind of whetted the appetite for what could happen. And I think there's a lot going to go on in the enterprise space. But for this talk, I'm mostly going to talk about the hot topic of the day, which seems to be AI, AR smart glasses. You know, one thing I like to remind people is that when the glasses are turned off is job number one. If they don't work as glasses, then they're not going to be all-day wearable. They're not going to be useful to people are going to have to take them out of their pocket, and it's easier to reach for their phone than to reach for their take glasses out of a case. It's going to be big and bulky. Blocking too much light, ideally, you really don't want to block more than about 20%. And you don't want then distortion of the real world. That's really what it means by when you turn it off. When you turn it off, they should be clear, and they shouldn't be causing problems. And one of the big things that always sneaks up on everybody is diffraction in several different forms, and that includes rainbow light capture and stuff like that. I got called on the carpet for calling smart glasses AR by people who didn't like me to use that term. The problem is that the terms are fluid and they keep changing. And so, you know, what do we call it? I got this from a web. I was looking online just to see, and I kind of like their description of kind of how the various ways that we have XR. And like I say, one thing I put in kind of a different category, but like the bird bath, like we X-Reel and so forth, I kind of put them in the augmented virtuality. They're really more virtual reality than they are AR or optical. The big question is whether it has SLAM or not, or locks to the real world. The people who have SLAM don't like calling smart glasses AR. And I can't, I'm not going to settle that here, but I just wanted to mention that. This is something old, and I've had it on my website, but I try to remind people that there's give or take about the deadly 20, this list bounces around with me. But the big thing I want to say is that when you improve one thing, it almost always has negative effects on the other 19 or so items on the list. I sometimes call this n-dimensional chess, that you're trying to move one thing around and it's bumping into everything else. And so there's a lot of things we're trying to solve all at once. The common AR optics, really when we're talking glasses, mostly the ones on the left. We got diffraction grating waveguides, and we have geometric waveguides. Everybody and his brother, there must be dozens of diffractive waveguide designs out there. They seem to do fairly well up to about 30 degrees. When they get beyond 30 degrees, there's a lot of problems inherent with doing diffractive waveguides. So when we're doing glasses, we're going to see glasses in this area. Now, I should note that Loomis is the big proponent of the geometric or reflective waveguides. They do very well even to wider. They're much better for color uniformity, tend to have better resolution, better everything that I've seen. And but they're seen to be, there's only one real good supplier. There's several copies of them that are getting better, but they're the one who makes one that really looks good. And so there's a single supplier, and there's always been the issue of whether, of course, that's the thing I keep hearing back on Loomis and their waveguides, but they're definitely better image quality. And we think Meta, is almost a certainty Meta is coming out with a monocular one using Loomis. Almost everybody else, including the latest from Snap and from Google, and everybody is using diffractive. We also have bird bath, but as I said, I don't really put it in the smart glasses category, in the AI, AR smart glasses, although it's going to get in there. They're kind of sneaking in the back door with Google right now. I look at it as the way it works and the way you utilize it. Anyway, so, yeah, but the bird bath, oh, there's an indent, should be there. But yeah, the bird bath has great image quality. That's the thing. It's a really cheap way. I kind of look at bird bath as a sprinter. It gets you to really good image quality, really inexpensively, particularly if you use OLEDs. But then that's as far as it gets you. Then it's hard to get to the next stage up. We have HOE mirrors. There are people trying to do that. That's a tricky thing to support. And then we have various other things, including the pin tilt from LED to AR. But this is where diffraction comes in and hits you a lot. When you look through those, you still get a lot of diffractive effects and a lot of kind of disturbing effects. Glasses are pushing, the glasses form factor pushes physics. Everything's getting really, really tiny. All these secondary concerns, like when we build if you took a television set, nobody building a television set even has to know about the word diffraction. It doesn't become a factor. But we're getting so small that many of these features are getting down to within a few wavelengths of light. Many of our pixels are a few wavelengths of light across. When you start doing that, diffraction is everything. So all these secondary factors. The other big thing that hits everybody is étendue. I call étendue the killer of dreams. Everything works until you factor in étendue. It's like I say, and it's huge for micro LEDs. This is really affecting things right now, and why I'd say, and I'm going to, if there's any little theme here, I think we're a little bit into the trough of disillusionment on micro LEDs. In spite of the fact, I wrote last week that I thought Google was going to be using LCOS. It looks like the Google glasses, from what I can understand now, are actually using their own micro LEDs, but the yields are probably less than 1%. And at a yield less than 1%, that means if they're using micro LEDs, then it's not a product. Oh, by the way, and the other big thing I always try to point out is glasses have no area for heat dissipations. Nobody's going to put fans on glasses and whatnot, so whatnot. And of course, we have weight, which is always a factor. I won't go too much into this, but for the basic physics is that étendue is really hard on micro LEDs. You can go on my website and I get into this some more. But micro LEDs, this is why LCOS is winning right now with waveguides. When you're going to waveguide, basically you can't couple the light in efficiently from micro LEDs. And you can put micro lenses on it, but that gets back to other physics things, which says there's a limit to how much you can collimate the light of a micro LED. Now there are people like Lydia who are working on nanorod type LEDs and all, but they don't really exist as a device that anybody can buy for quite a long time. And as I always say, inserting humans into the equation complicates everything. As an engineer, everything was going well until we put humans in the equation. The products, what do you have of a product that only works for 90% of the population or 50%? And there's all kinds of problems, from head sizes, different IPDs, different depths of sockets, the depth of the eye socket, all that stuff. So there's just so many variables with humans that it makes it really hard. The other thing I'm seeing is several people have been talking, like both Google, the Google demonstration, and both Meta are coming up with monocular, but it's not as much as hand dominance, but there's eye dominance. There's people have a non-functional eye, or an eye doesn't work very well. But generally, it doesn't totally correlate with hand either. So there can be problems if you put it on the non-dominant eye, so do you have both ways, but then you avoid other issues. And one thing I like to say, I always say, there's this trough of consumer expectations. Consumers are used to televisions. They're expecting extremely high image quality at extremely low cost. And no real-world artifacts, TV quality display, full color, binocular, lightweight, all that stuff. And that's an expectation that's going to be extremely hard to meet. We're going to have to get, all the glasses are going to give on some of those aspects. Yeah. We got to be realistic about image quality. It's not going to be great. We're looking at, when I talk about AR and smart glass and all, I'm thinking the background is whatever you see. The black is what you see. You can't have great contrast. You can talk about all this phenomenal contrast specs of a display device, but that's not what you see. What you see is a background. The contrast is going to be poor by definition, regardless of the display contrast. So We need 2 to 1 to kind of read stuff, and that's if you make it kind of big and stuff. And we need 8 to 1 to really be able to, 8 to 1 contrast to see color. So that means if you want to be able to see color really well, you have to be 8 times brighter than what's out there to see color well. And I warn you that, if you looked at a piece of white concrete, that's 10,000 nits. So that, I don't think we're going to blast 80,000 nits into the eye. So then you start to come up, well, we're going to have to do dimming and other stuff maybe. So that's all that stuff. So anyway, and then another big question is, dead or weak pixels acceptable? I saw somebody, one of the micro LED guys said they had 99.5% good pixels, 99% good pixels, which means and they had a 500,000 pixel display, which means there's 2,500 dead pixels or bad pixels. That's the problem we're dealing with. And that's the mirror can correct only to a limit, because a lot of times these LEDs they're going to be bad. This is another thing holding back LEDs. The manufacturing process and whatnot of it is just inherent and it's immature. So we got people exploring monocular and biocular, and that's going through. I think consumers are going to want biocular. I think in task-oriented things you can maybe get away with for a lot of tasks where it's data. A lot of times when you're just doing data snacking, you may be able to get away with monocular. They're doing it for obvious reasons. Another big question is, well, we have green only and full color. I think green only works for tasks, and for data snacking it can work, but it's not the way to go. The consumer is not going to expect that. And for a lot of, you don't get things like red means good. A lot of things, by the way, and when you're doing transparent display, you want bold colors. Red means good, green means bad. That doesn't give you many colors left because you can't tell many of the other ones. Yellow it can be sometimes hard to tell from red. Center of view. Oh, and the other big thing is, where do you place the image? That's a big problem. Consumers expect it to be in the center where they expect things to be. That's really hard to. If you do monocular, you can put it off to the side, but you can't. You don't really want to put a display off to the side in biocular where both your eyes are shifting. Plus, we have other social aspects with that, like you're looking down and looking around. Prescription optics makes everything hard. We have eye relief if you're going to wear glasses, this is fine if you're doing the helmet, but if we're talking glasses, your eye relief is set at about 13, give or take, millimeters. Inserts, that's a very unhappy compromise. Tends to make things front heavy. Once again, we're into helmets if you're doing that, not into glasses. Integrated prescriptions, that's essential for all-day wearable. You can't be taking them on and off and whatnot. And boy, that means you got to handle, like I have very bad astigmatism. Most of the demos out here, I love it how people have both eyes. They think both eyes are the same. Most people don't have the same diopter in both eyes. And beyond that, with me, my vision is not too bad, but my astigmatism is terrible. So if you can't correct astigmatism, and then if you're older than about 35, 40, you need varifocus too. Reflective activities make some parts of the prescription simpler and other parts more difficult. The big topic these days, and we're seeing, as I said, there's kind of a trough of disillusionment on micro LED. A lot of it's because LCOS inherently, right now with the current physics of the LEDs we can buy and everything else we're doing, it's more than 10 times, perhaps 20 times more efficient for a full white screen. And you might say, well, I'm only going to put a sparse text, because most things, if you're doing data snacking like text and arrows and things, then it's mostly like 5% after average pixel value. But what do you do if a guy reads a web page? Or what if a guy puts up a photograph or uses a camera viewfinder? One of the big things people want to do is camera viewfinders. And if you do that, you don't know it. What if he looks at a white piece of concrete? You can't have the headset blow up. So those are all kind of big issues. So right now, that's why you're kind of seeing when guys actually go make a product, not just making a demo for the research lab guys or to impress the president of the company or whatnot. But when you're making a real product, they keep coming back to LCOS to make something real. And that's just the reality of it today. The paths to full color with micro LEDs are tough. The X cube is only, I think, a temporary measure. It's complicated and expensive. You got to align the panels. And it doesn't scale very well. As the panels get bigger, that cube gets big, it grows volumetrically, and it doesn't work very well. 3-chip waveguide combiner is one of the better ways to go to do that, but you still got to now space those 3 chips around, and as those chips get bigger, which they almost have to, as you go to higher resolution, then that's going to get kind of weird how big that waveguide is going to get in that area with 3 chips side by side by side. You know, you can do a native stack. I've seen some of that happening. One of the big ways that everyone's going, many people are going UV quantum dots with blue. Problem we seem to get there all the time is that we see blue leaking through. They can't get blue through. So the other way to go is the UV. The people doing quantum dots with UV stimulation have the advantage that they can put a cut filter on UV, and they better cut it really well, because it's a little bit like the psychology of laser scanning. Everybody knows UV is bad for your eyes, so you're going to be shooting UV at your eyes. You better stop it damn well. So that's got a bit of a psychological problem too, not beyond what you could do with science or prove to them. We have native LED with spatial color. That's what Google's Raxium. That's what the Google demo glasses were doing. And then we have a single emitter for all colors, which is kind of interesting. Good for the étendue because you get one emitter rather than a spatial where you spread the colors out. It's a very complicated process to do. And I think Torotech right now, I think they're doing a green only one. You know, they're just saying we'll tune ours for green only, but there's some companies doing that. This has long-term potential, but it's a very complicated thing to drive. Give you an example of green only. That was, I want to show this. This is done by Avegant. This is Avegant. They did this. This is from them, but I liked it because it was nice and graphic and all. That there's a 720 by 720 pixels, so it's almost double the pixels. It's LCOS versus a X cube, a smaller resolution X cube, and you can kind of see side by side their engine into a waveguide, and I think they're going into maybe almost the same waveguide. I think both of these are using applied materials. You see, actually, the LCOS is smaller. I think that one of the things the LCOS guys had a problem with is they said, "Oh, we got to do 4K by 4K and 2K." Oh, you mean you only want to do that many pixels? Well, we can make that small too. So this, by the way, is from Innovision. This is one of the best I've seen that has a stacked pixel, but I've kind of blown that up enough so you can see that there's a lot of kind of bad, questionable dead pixels. This is stacked. They've gone red, green, blue stacked on each other. There's a lot of questions what happens if you get this heated up, because you've got these different crystalline layers and what may happen. This is the 3-chip X cube. This is I did a whole series on this, so I'll let you can read about this on my blog. But just show you, there were pixel misalignments. You can see alignments of pixel. You know, they've got to align the colors and all. But once again, how good does it really need to be? We're talking AR glasses, so sometimes you get beyond. This is interesting. I got really excited. This shows you the potential of LEDs. If you look on the far right there, you can barely see the engine. This is using a play nitride thing with a Loomis waveguide, but you see basically the projector disappears. You can barely see it, and this gives you a progression. And I have this on the blog recently. Angular resolution and field of view. You know, I've beat on this a few times, but the bottom line is if you get beyond about 30 degrees field of view, I call that kind of the speed of the sound barrier. Once you break 30-degree field of view, everything blows up on you. You need more pixels to sustain the field of view. You need more power for those pixels. You've got to cover more area. More area means more light. More light means more power. And before you know it, you've spiraled in and you look. This is how I say you start with Ray-Ban and end with HoloLens. By the time you get beyond 30 degrees, you might as well start with a HoloLens type form factor and then work your way back to what you can do. Because you got to put cameras up there, you want SLAM up there, you want this, you want that. What happens, it's kind of like everything that goes around it. You go into a spiral. A big thing is necessity and location of cameras. I think the big companies want cameras out there. I think they figured out that the best place they could put a camera is on your face. I heard Apple dropped their putting a camera on a watch. They figured out that wasn't a good place to put a camera. But everybody wants the camera in the face. The camera's it's a tough problem because the cameras enable more AI capability. It's just there. I see people who were saying, we're going to go cheap. We're going to low cost power, bump, bump, bump. We're going to leave out the camera and the speakers and stuff. And they're going back now to put that stuff in. Because really to make AI happen, the super intelligent stuff happen, you got to do that. Privacy concerns, of course, are there. The best camera locations are going to be near the eye. And then we got eye tracking cameras because people, not only for your functionality, because the AI may not know where you're staying, but also the people who want to track you and want to know where your eyes are aiming. So social aspects, we all know those are a big issue. This is there is the Google glasses you see. These are using Atmel. I don't know why Applied Materials is doing this. I imagine they're going to fix this eventually, but they have about the worst eye glow I've ever seen. But anyway, we got the issues with cameras and everything else. We got privacy and safety. Privacy is obvious. It's talked about a lot. Safety is another aspect. You're distracted. Even if you're see-through, you can be distracted, but you just get involved in what you're doing. And we see that with phones. Even if it's heads up, you can be gone, and then you say, oh my God, I just walked across the street, and I don't know how I got here. That's dangerous. So we got those kind of issues. And then, of course, another big issue, if you put the display in the middle of your field of view, and it decides to do something, it puts a warning up, or it puts a text message up in front of you, just as the car is coming and stuff. So we probably, guys, I think the prior speaker and other people were talking about, we probably want some AI to do some stuff for us to keep us from getting hurt. I do like to always point out, I'm not real big on these touch things. These things are very unreliable. We got to work better on the gestures are not hands-free because you're tying up your hands with it. So maybe this is an area where AI is going to come in and help some. I just touch on a few of the applications. We got everything from super memory to super intelligence. Teleprompters are obvious things, and then there's all these applications for that. I think I'm going to, you're competing with a smartphone though, because you're always going to be doing that, and it's hit a little bit of big companies. I think I've hit these as we went, so I'll leave that up, and then why don't I take a little bit time for maybe one or two questions. I'll just leave that up as we go.
Hi, thank you for this very informative presentation. In terms of the hard laws of physics challenges that you've presented there in the existing LCOS and micro LED, are there any other options that are being explored in R&D labs right now that you're aware of that could end up being promising? And next question is the accelerating component of AI, especially in accelerating the development of software, iterations of testing, the ability to compress information, do you think that may lead to other approaches for solving some of these problems?
I'm not sure I can answer the software question, but the hardware question is, of course, I get beat up a lot by the laser beam scanning stuff, and I'll probably get beat up again for not mentioning it. But it's still, to me, speculative. Laser scanning's been around actually in this field for longer than I've been in it, since the mid-90s. But the laser scanning's never come through as a display thing. I don't know of another display technology that has any serious traction at all. I mean, if you look at what you can go buy, everything's LCOS and a little bit of DLP out there. DLP seems to keep losing out to LCOS. They're very similar in the way they get used. But yeah, you got DLP, you got that. I'm more of the, like I say, I'm mostly a display and optics guy these days, so I'm a little hardware. I can't help as much on the software side. But yeah, I think you've got those out there. But right now, if you look at guys who really are doing something, it's all LCOS and micro LEDs.
Yeah, Karl, thanks so much for everything you do. I think I speak for many of us that the optical part of our industry and the hardware side is something I know the least about. So I've learned so much from you and on your website, so many thanks for that. One question is, I'm curious about Halliday and how that's working with the laser kind of retina, impression, and what your thoughts are there. And
I'm
also,
sorry, could you repeat that again? What was the?
the Halliday glasses that are coming.
Oh,
the-
Halliday.
yeah, Halliday. And also, I would be curious your opinion on the meta-androl and the silicon carbide kind of scalability and what you think that's going to wind up taking us.
Okay,
Thank you.
those are all interesting questions. Real quick, let's see. If we go to Halliday, I don't think much of it. It's you've got to be looking right at it. You got to look up for it. That's terrible ergonomically, and that's the only way it works. You have to look straight into it, and you have to look up. Looking up is bad. Anybody who does ergonomics knows you want to look. Your human body's, your eye and everything wants to look down. It's very hard to see. It'll be very hard to see the thing. It's actually very similar optically though to the Mojo Vision, and I didn't like Mojo Vision. So, and the other question was it's silicon carbide. I know the Chinese. One thing Meta did succeed in doing. I know there's a lot of activity in doing silicon carbide in China for optics. A lot of the stuff they're using right now is not what they call optical grade silicon carbide. But it's caused activity. I think if you're talking, silicon carbide is very hard to work, very expensive. I think, if you're talking the next 10 years, I don't think it's happening. I would be going, I think when they really do a product, it'll be in glass. And what was it was another part of that, the andrel everything?
What's the glass you're most excited about coming up the next 12 months?
Ooh, that's a good one. Personally, I'm more interested in the industrial thing. I think the industrial thing's real. I think it's really easy to sell somebody to say, hey, I can do the elevator speech, right? I'll make your person a little bit more effective, 3%, 5% more effective, pay for itself in months. That's the whole AR pitch today. And there's a big hole left by basically HoloLens whetted the appetite and then they vacated the field. And there's a lot of room to gate that, including the military and other markets. Those are real markets. The smart glasses, we'll see. I think we may get into a trough of disillusionment there because these problems are really hard. To really make glasses, the hardest problem is to make it work like glasses.